With about 100,000 people killed in Syria thus far, headlines worldwide point a finger at Assad's regime for reportedly using chemical weapons on his own people. The U.S. has mobilized their forces, and there is talk about preparing for a scenario of a potential attack. Some believe it's about time for such intervention, while others deter away from it. We asked one of Israel's national security experts to assess the situation.
A civil war is raging in Syria, and none of the two belligerent forces, the Assad regime and the rebel groups that are fighting against the Assad regime, is able of defeating the larger party. And the numbers of innocent civilians that are hurt is growing and growing.
Do you believe there was indeed a chemical weapon attack?
It seems that there were several cases of the use of chemical weapons. The most recent one is the most horrendous one. The reports are about more than 1,000 casualties. However, what is not clear is what kind of chemical weapon was used, and what is the rationale for the usage of this kind of weapons by the regime, because much of it doesn't really make sense.
Now the U.S. has mobilized forces. Will we be seeing an American intervention?
The reasonable compromise will be to take a one-time punitive action against the Syrian regime, attack target that is important for the Syrian regime, and stop. Real intervention means a series of actions aimed at changing the balance of forces between the regime forces and the opposition forces. And I don't foresee a change in the U.S. administration basic approach and a beginning of this kind of intervention.
And what would be the repercussions for Israel should the U.S. intervene?
I think that most probably there will not be any important repercussions to Israel of this. Because it's true that the Syrian regime will have a motivation to try to hurt U.S. interest. And Israel is considered to be a U.S. interest. The problem is that Israel is the kind of U.S. interest that strikes back. And I don't think that this time the regime is interested in adding Israel to the list of his active enemies that will attack him and try to destroy its control of Syria.
What is the best case scenario for Israel where Syria is concerned?
Almost all the scenarios are bad, because the only good scenario, namely a scenario in which the Assad regime is toppled and it is replaced by a secular, liberal, democratic regime, is a highly improbable scenario. So the scenarios range between victory for the Assad regime, which is a bad scenario for Israel, because mostly because of its implication on the regional balance of forces between those that side with Iran and those that are against Iran. It can be a never-ending civil war, which will actually create a chaotic situation in the Syrian side, which is bad for Israel. And it can be a situation in which the regime falls down and it is replaced by extreme Islamist regime, which is also a bad scenario. And there is also another scenario, and that is a scenario in which Syria is fragmented into several mini-states. An Alawite state, a Sunni state, a Kurdish state. That is, I would say, the less problematic of all the scenarios.
Syrian officials deny having used chemical weapons, blaming the rebels for the attack, which killed over 1,000 Syrians. They warn, however, that any attack on Syria will result in war in the entire Middle East. For JN1, I'm Sivan Raviv, Israel.